The fist connected with her face like a hammer. Blood sprayed across the bar floor. A 54-year-old woman hit the ground while 3 Marines laughed above her. Lieutenant Kyle Mercer stood over Commander Margaret Sullivan, knuckles red with her blood phone cameras recording everything. He thought he'd just humiliated a washed-up old woman. He had no idea he'd just triggered a war against someone who'd spent 32 years learning how to destroy men exactly like him. What happened next would end his career, expose a senator's corruption, and prove that underestimating a middle-aged Navy SEAL is the last mistake you'll ever make. If you want to see how this incredible story unfolds, subscribe to my channel and follow Margaret's journey to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel around the world. The coffee was cold. Margaret Sullivan didn't care. She'd drunk worse in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. Places where cold coffee was a luxury and staying alive was the only menu option. She sat alone in the corner booth of O'Malley's Tavern, reading a classified training manual that had been declassified just enough to bore anyone looking over her shoulder. The book was a prop. Her eyes tracked the door every 30 seconds. Old habits. The kind beaten into muscle memory by 3 decades of operations where missing a detail meant missing your flight home in a body bag. 54 years old. Silver threading through brown hair she'd stopped dyeing years ago. Lines around her eyes from squinting through rifle scopes in desert sun. Hands that looked like they belonged to a grandmother but could still field strip an M4 blindfolded in under 30 seconds. She'd arrived at Naval Special Warfare Training Center that morning. Civilian consultant now. The uniform was gone, but the bearing remained. Master Chief Dennis Crawford had met her at the gate with a handshake that said more than words could. "Maggie, damn good to see you." "Dennis, you got old." "We all got old. Difference is you still look like you could run the O course." "I ran it this morning, faster than your current instructor cadre if the times posted on the board are accurate." Crawford had laughed. The laugh of a man who knew she wasn't joking. They'd served together for 15 years. Panama, Iraq, Afghanistan. The missions that made the news and the ones that never would. He'd watched her carry wounded Marines through enemy fire. She'd watched him hold a position for 18 hours with a bullet in his thigh. They didn't need to explain themselves to each other. "Got a problem I need you to look at," Crawford had said, his smile fading. "What kind?" "The political kind. Senator's nephew. Name's Kyle Mercer. Failed buds twice. Blamed everything except himself. Now he's assigned here as a training liaison while his uncle pulls strings to get him another shot. And he's been running his mouth. Says the teams have gone soft. Says allowing women consultants proves we've lowered standards. Says you specifically are proof that political correctness matters more than combat readiness." Margaret had felt nothing. Men like Mercer were background noise. She'd faced hundreds of them over 3 decades. They all sounded the same. They all ended the same. "What do you want me to do about it?" "Nothing. Just wanted you to know. Stay away from O'Malley's tonight. That's his regular spot. His crew drinks there every Friday." She'd nodded, said nothing else. Drove straight to O'Malley's the moment Crawford was out of sight. Now she sat in the corner booth waiting. Not hiding. Positioning. There was a difference. One was fear. The other was strategy. The door opened at 7:15. 3 men walked in like they owned the place. The one in front had the walk, shoulders too far back, chin too high. The swagger of a man who'd never been truly tested and mistook that luck for strength. Kyle Mercer. She recognized him from his file photo. 29 years old, 6'2", 200 pounds of gym muscle that had never been stress tested in actual combat. Handsome in that generic way that got men through life on charm instead of capability. Behind him came 2 others, Ryan Oakes and Derek Morrison. Mercer's shadows, the kind of men who followed loud voices because they didn't have ones of their own. Margaret turned a page, kept reading. Let them settle at the bar. Let them order drinks. Let them get comfortable. 11 minutes. That's how long it took for Mercer to notice her. Ryan spotted her first. nudged Mercer, whispered something. Mercer's head turned. His eyes found the sealed trident pin on her jacket folded on the seat beside her. Then they tracked up to her face. Gray hair. Lines. Age. She watched the calculation happen in real time, watched him decide she couldn't possibly be what the pin suggested, watched him choose disbelief over reality because reality threatened his ego. He said something to his crew. They laughed. Phones came out. The modern battlefield. Everything documented. Everything shareable. Everything weaponized. Margaret set her book down, waited. Mercer stood, crossed the space between them with the stride of a man who'd made a decision and wouldn't be talked out of it. His boots hit the floor with authority he hadn't earned. Ryan and Derek followed at a distance, close enough to back him up, far enough to pretend innocence if needed. Margaret didn't look up. Not yet. Let him come. Let him think he had the initiative. Mercer stopped at her table, hands on his hips, the pose of a man playing soldier instead of being one. Well, well. The famous Margaret Sullivan. She finished the sentence she was reading, closed the book with precision. Then and only then did she raise her eyes to meet his. Lieutenant Mercer. His jaw tightened at the rank. At the reminder that despite his uncle, despite his connections, she still outranked him, would always outrank him. They told me you were some kind of legend. Looking at you now, I'm thinking legends get exaggerated. They often do. You were what supply administration. They let you pin a trident for making coffee. The bar had gone quieter, conversations dying, heads turning. She could feel the attention shifting like a physical weight. Combat diver, direct action, 32 years. Mercer snorted. Sure, and I'm the Pope. You're what, 60, 70. My grandmother moves faster than you probably can. 54, and I completed the obstacle course this morning in 12 minutes 47 seconds. Your posted time from last month was 14 minutes 12 seconds. Would you like to compare dive certifications next? Or should we skip to the part where you say something you can't take back? The words landed like slaps. Derek and Ryan exchanged glances. Phones were definitely recording now, multiple angles. Mercer's face went red, the flush of a man whose ego had just been publicly punctured. You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you, Lieutenant. Failed buds twice. Quit during pool competency both times. Blamed equipment failure the first time. Blamed instructor bias the second. Never once looked in a mirror and asked if maybe the problem was the man staring back. That's classified. Your uncle's a senator. Senators request files. Files get copied. Copies circulate. She picked up her coffee, took a sip, set it back down. You're not special, Lieutenant. You're not even interesting. You're just another man who couldn't meet the standard and blamed the standard instead of himself. The silence in the bar was absolute now. Every eye on their table, every phone aimed their direction. Mercer's hand shot out. Quick, deliberate. He flicked her coffee cup, sending cold liquid spraying across the table, across her book, across her jacket with the trident pin. Oops. Margaret didn't flinch, didn't react, just watched him with eyes that had seen men die in 12 countries. That's the best you can do. I'm just getting started, Grandma. I'm sure you are. Mercer leaned in close, voice dropping to a whisper that the phones might not catch. You know what I think. I think you slept your way to that trident. I think every commendation you have was handed to you, because some general wanted what was between your legs. I think you're a fraud, and I think everyone here is going to find out exactly what you really are. Margaret's expression didn't change. Not a flicker, not a tremor. Is that what you tell yourself, Lieutenant, when you're alone at night wondering why you failed? Is it easier to believe women cheated than to accept that a woman was simply better than you? Mercer's hand curled into a fist. What did you say to me? I said you failed because you weren't good enough. Not because of politics, not because of affirmative action, not because the standards were too high. You failed because when the water got cold and the pressure got real, you quit. Twice. And you've spent the last 3 years blaming everyone except the only person responsible. You don't know. I was there, Lieutenant. The words hit him like a physical blow. His face went white. What? Hell Week, your second attempt. I was evaluating the instructor cadre. I watched you ring the bell. I watched you stand there shivering, crying, begging them to let you try again while the medics wrapped you in blankets. I watched you blame the instructors, the temperature, the equipment, everything except yourself. She paused. Let it sink in. You quit, Lieutenant. You chose to quit. And now you're standing here 3 years later trying to intimidate a woman twice your age because that's easier than admitting you didn't have what it takes. Mercer's fist came up fast. Horizontal strike aimed at her jaw. The swing of someone who'd never been in a real fight against someone actually dangerous, telegraphed, predictable, amateur. She could have dodged, could have blocked, could have put him on the ground before his knuckles connected. Instead, she leaned into it, subtle, imperceptible. Just enough. His fist connected with her cheekbone. The crack echoed in the sudden silence. Her head rocked sideways. Blood welled from her split lip where her teeth caught the inside of her mouth. She went down. One knee. Controlled fall. Looked real. Felt real enough. Perfect. The bar erupted. Voices shouting. Someone calling for the bartender. Phones staying up capturing everything. Mercer stood over her fist, still clenched face caught between shock and satisfaction. Margaret stayed down for 5 seconds. Let the blood drip. Let the cameras catch the visible damage. Then she rose, slow, deliberate. No stagger, no weakness, just smooth upward motion that said the fall had been mechanical, not debilitating. She wiped her mouth with her knuckles, looked at the blood with clinical detachment. Then she picked up her jacket, slid one arm in, then the other, straightened the trident pin. She walked past Mercer without looking at him, past Ryan and Derek, who'd gone statue still, past the other patrons who'd started half rising from their seats. At the door, she stopped, turned, made eye contact with Mercer across the length of the bar. "See you Monday, Lieutenant." His bravado flickered. "What's Monday?" Her expression could have been carved from stone. "Your education." She pushed through the door into the night, posture perfect, stride unwavering, like getting punched in the face was just another Tuesday. Behind her, the bar stayed frozen for 3 seconds. Then Cal, the bartender, Navy veteran, 20 years retired, set down his glass and looked at Mercer with something close to pity. "Son, you just made the worst mistake of your life." Mercer laughed. Forced. Too loud. "She's not going to do anything. Washed up old woman. My uncle's a senator. She can't touch me." Cal shook his head slowly, started wiping the bar, wouldn't meet Mercer's eyes. "You know who she is, right?" "Actually is. Some consultant, pretending to be something she's not. She's the ghost kid." The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Derek's face went white. Ryan took an actual step backward. "The ghost. As in, the ghost. The one who Kandahar, 2007. Single-handedly extracted a 4-man team from a Taliban compound. Carried the last one 2 miles with a separated shoulder and a punctured lung. Killed 11 hostiles with a knife because she'd run out of ammunition." Cal set down his rag. "She's got more confirmed kills than your entire unit combined. She's trained more SEALs than you've ever met. She held a position in Syria for 19 hours against 40 insurgents until reinforcements arrived, and she did it with 2 Marines who were both wounded worse than she was." Mercer's swagger was cracking. That's not what, son, not possible, not real. You just punched her in the face and she didn't even blink. You think that's normal? You think regular people take a hit like that and get up smiling?" Cal leaned forward. "She let you hit her boy. She saw it coming. She could have put you in the hospital before you finished your swing. But she wanted you to connect. She wanted this whole bar to see it. She wanted every one of those phones recording." Cal straightened. Looked at Mercer with the eyes of a man who'd seen too much to be fooled. "I don't know what she's planning, but I know this, you're not going to like it. And your uncle, senator or not, isn't going to be able to stop it. Because that woman doesn't fight battles she can't win. She doesn't start fights she can't finish. And she's been winning fights against men like you since before you were born." He picked up his rag again, started wiping. "Go home, Lieutenant. Enjoy your weekend. Because come Monday, I think your life is about to get real interesting. Mercer stood there, fist still clenched, face a mask of confusion and the first tremors of fear. Ryan put a hand on his shoulder. Kyle, let's go. Derek was already moving toward the door. Yeah, man. This isn't good. We should talk to someone. A lawyer, maybe. Or what? Mercer shook off Ryan's hand. She's the one who got hit. She's the one bleeding. How is this my problem? No one answered. The silence said everything. Mercer looked around the bar. Every face was turned away. Every set of eyes suddenly fascinated by drinks tables anything but him. She's just an old woman, he said. She's nobody. Cal laughed. A short, bitter sound. She's nobody who's been called to the White House 3 times. Nobody who's got more medals than your uncle has campaign donors. Nobody who turned down a promotion to admiral because she said desk work would bore her. He met Mercer's eyes. She's the most dangerous person you've ever met, son. And you just gave her exactly what she wanted. Now get out of my bar before I call the MPs myself. Mercer left. His crew followed. The door closed behind them with a sound like a cell door slamming. Cal picked up his phone, dialed a number from memory. Master Chief Crawford. It's Cal at O'Malley's. Yeah, she was here. He did exactly what you said he would. Got the whole thing on about 15 phones. What? No, she's fine. Walked out like nothing happened. Told him she'd see him Monday. He listened. Yeah, that's what I figured. Poor bastard has no idea what's coming. He hung up, poured himself a whiskey, looked at the door where Mercer had disappeared. No idea at all. Across town, Margaret Sullivan walked into the MP station at Camp Pendleton. The young corporal at the front desk looked up. His eyes went wide at the bruise already forming across her cheekbone. Ma'am, are you... I need to file an incident report. Her voice was level, professional, like she was reporting a missing vehicle instead of an assault. The corporal grabbed forms, fumbled slightly. Yes, ma'am. Do you need medical first? The report is sufficient. She filled out the paperwork with precise handwriting. Time, location, names, description of the assault, number of witnesses, presence of recording devices. She wrote it like an after-action report from a combat operation. Clinical, factual, devastating in its lack of emotion. The corporal read it over, confusion clear on his face. Ma'am, with this documentation, do you want to press charges? Margaret looked up. Her eyes were calm, patient. Not yet. Just document it. Not yet, ma'am. This is assault against a superior officer. We can have him in custody tonight. I'm aware of what it is, Corporal. I'm also aware of who his uncle is and what kind of resources he has access to. One assault, no witnesses willing to testify against a senator's nephew, becomes my word against his. He walks, probably gets promoted. I get labeled a troublemaker. She signed the form. I'm not interested in winning a battle. I'm interested in winning the war. Document this incident. File it. Make sure it reaches Colonel Whitmore's desk by morning. The corporal took the form. Something in his expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. Ma'am, are you Commander Sullivan? The Commander Sullivan. I'm a consultant corporal, nothing more. But the stories, Kandahar, the extraction, they said you... Stories are just that, stories. She picked up her copy of the report. I'm 54 years old. I don't chase legends. I chase results. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a long weekend of planning ahead. She walked out. The corporal watched her go, then looked down at the incident report in his hands. Something about the whole interaction felt off, like he'd just witnessed the first move in a chess game he didn't have the experience to understand. He filed it anyway. In her temporary quarters on base, Margaret Sullivan stood at the window watching the lights of Camp Pendleton spread out below her. Her face throbbed where Mercer's fist had connected. Tomorrow the bruise would be spectacular. Purple and black and impossible to hide. Perfect. She picked up her phone. Dialed. "Dennis, it's done." Cal called. Said he walked right into it. Exactly like we thought. His ego is bigger than his brain. He couldn't resist. "You okay?" "I'm fine." He hits like a man who's never had to fight for anything real. "What's the next move?" "I filed the initial report. No charges yet. Let him think he got away with it. Let him relax this weekend. Let him tell his uncle the old lady won't be a problem." And Monday. Monday, I start the education phase. There was a pause on the line. When Crawford spoke again, his voice was careful. "You sure you want to do this, Maggie? His uncle has serious power. This could get ugly." "It's already ugly, Dennis. It's been ugly for 32 years. Every woman who's tried to earn her place in this community has faced some version of Kyle Mercer. Men who can't accept that we might be as good as them, better than them. Men who use fists when words fail and connections when fists fail." She touched the bruise on her cheek. "I didn't take that punch for me. I took it for every female operator who'll come after. Everyone who'll face her own Mercer and wonder if speaking up is worth the cost. I'm going to make an example of him. A permanent, public, undeniable example. So clear that no senator's phone call can make it disappear. And if his uncle comes after you, then his uncle can join him. I've got 32 years of favors to call in, Dennis. Generals who owe me, admirals who served with me, a vice president who shook my hand and told me to call if I ever needed anything. Kyle Mercer thinks he's protected. He's not. He's just too young and stupid to know the difference." Crawford was quiet for a moment. "You really are the ghost, aren't you?" "I'm just someone who refuses to quit, Dennis. That's all I've ever been. The ghost, the legend, the first female this or that, those are just words other people use. I'm just someone who figured out early that the only way to survive in this world is to be so good that even the people who hate you can't argue with results." She walked to the small desk, spread out the files she'd been compiling for months, training schedules, personnel assignments, evaluation criteria. Monday, Mercer gets transferred to my training program. Colonel Whitmore already signed off. He thinks it's punishment for the assault. He doesn't know the full plan. What is the full plan? Exposure, not destruction. I don't want to create a martyr. I want to expose exactly what he is. Let him fail publicly. Let him demonstrate his inadequacy in front of witnesses and cameras and documentation so thorough that no amount of political pressure can spin it. And if he doesn't fail, if he actually rises to the standard— Margaret smiled, the first genuine smile since she'd walked into O'Malley's. "Then I'll have done something even better than destroying him. I'll have made him into someone worth having in the teams. Either way, I win. Either way, the truth comes out. Either way, men like him learn that attacking women like me has consequences." She hung up, touched her cheek again. "You wanted a war, Lieutenant Mercer. Congratulations. You just got one." Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I know who you are. I know what you're doing. Be careful. He's more connected than you think." A friend. Margaret stared at the message for a long moment. Then she blocked the number. Friends didn't hide behind anonymous texts, and warnings didn't stop wars. They just told you the enemy knew you were coming. She pulled up Mercer's file again, his uncle's file, the network of political connections that had protected him for 3 years, the strings that had been pulled, the reports that had been buried, the witnesses that had been silenced. She started making a list. By morning, it would be a battle plan. By Monday, it would be a trap. And by the time Kyle Mercer understood what was happening, it would be far, far too late to escape. The ghost didn't announce her presence. She just appeared. And by the time you saw her, you were already dead. Monday morning came with the kind of cold that cut through uniforms and excuses alike. Kyle Mercer arrived at the training facility at Euro 600, coffee in hand, expecting another routine day of rubber stamp assignments and easy paperwork. His uncle had called Sunday night to assure him the situation was handled. The old woman wasn't pressing charges. Nothing to worry about. Just lay low, keep his head down, let it blow over. He believed it. That was his first mistake. Master Chief Crawford met him at the gate. No smile, no greeting, just a folded paper thrust into his hands. Transfer orders, effective immediately. Mercer scanned the document. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers. This says I'm assigned to combat dive training. Under civilian oversight, this can't be. It is. My uncle specifically requested I stay in administrative liaison. He spoke to Colonel Whitmore personally. Colonel Whitmore signed those orders personally. Seems he had a change of heart over the weekend. Mercer's jaw tightened. Who's the civilian oversight? Crawford's expression was unreadable. You already know. No way, that's retaliation. That's illegal. My uncle will. Your uncle is a senator lieutenant, not God, and the woman you punched on Friday has enough friends in the Pentagon to make your uncle's phone calls disappear into voicemail. Crawford turned away. Report to the dive facility at 0700. Full gear. Don't be late. Mercer stood frozen. The coffee pooled around his boots, steaming in the cold air. For the first time since Friday night, he felt something crack in his certainty. She'd done this. The old woman. She'd gotten to Whitmore. She'd bypassed his uncle. She'd moved pieces on a board he didn't even know existed, and now she had him. The dive facility hummed with activity when Mercer arrived. Ryan and Derek were already there, suited up faces tight with confusion. They'd received similar orders. All three of them transferred out of their cushy assignments into the most physically demanding training program on base. What the hell is going on? Ryan whispered. She's coming after us. All of us. For what? We didn't even touch her. You're the one who... Shut up. The door opened. Margaret Sullivan walked in like she owned every molecule of oxygen in the room. The bruise on her cheekbone had bloomed overnight into a spectacular purple and black testament to Friday night. She made no attempt to hide it. If anything, she positioned herself so every camera, every witness, every pair of eyes could see exactly what Kyle Mercer had done to her. She wore instructor khakis. Dive qualification badges lined her collar. The seal trident sat over her heart like an accusation. Good morning, gentlemen. Her voice was calm, pleasant even. The voice of someone discussing weather, not addressing the man who'd broken her face 3 days ago. I'm Commander Sullivan. For the next 2 weeks, I'll be evaluating your combat dive readiness and making recommendations regarding your continued service in special operations support roles. 2 weeks. She was going to take 2 weeks to destroy him. Derek's hand shot up. Ma'am, we're not in diving programs. We're administrative. You were administrative. Now you're whatever I say you are. Colonel Whitmore has given me complete discretion over training methodology and personnel assignments for the duration of this evaluation. She let that sink in. Any questions should be directed to the Colonel's office. Any complaints should be directed to the Colonel's office. Any attempts to circumvent this assignment through outside channels will be noted, documented, and added to your permanent files. She looked directly at Mercer. Do we understand each other, Lieutenant? Every word was a blade. Every syllable a reminder that she held power here, that his uncle's phone calls had failed, that he was trapped in exactly the position she wanted him in. Yes, ma'am. The words tasted like ash. Outstanding. Change into dive gear. Full wetsuit. We begin in 15 minutes. She walked to the equipment check station, started inspecting gear with methodical precision. Didn't look at them again. Mercer's hands shook as he changed. Rage. Fear. Something else he couldn't name. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to be protected. His uncle had promised. Kyle. Derek's voice was barely audible. Maybe we should just cooperate. Do what she says. Get through this. She's trying to destroy us. She's trying to train us. That's literally her job. Open your eyes, Derek. She's punishing me. You're just collateral. Then maybe you shouldn't have punched a 54-year-old woman in a bar full of witnesses. Mercer's head snapped around. What did you say? Derek held his gaze. Something in his expression had shifted, something that looked almost like spine. I said, maybe you shouldn't have punched her. We both followed you to that table. We both laughed when you did it. But you threw the punch. You made the choice. And now we're all paying for it. So what, you're on her side now? I'm on the side of getting through this with my career intact. If that means swimming until my lungs burst, fine. At least I'll still have a job. Derek walked away, started checking his gear, left Mercer standing alone with Ryan, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on Earth. He's right, Ryan muttered. We should just get through this. Traitors, both of you. Ryan didn't respond, just grabbed his fins and headed for the pool. The first drill was simple. Underwater navigation, 50-meter swim, 0 visibility, retrieve a marker, return to start. Standard time 90 seconds. Mercer had done this drill before, during his Bud's attempts. He'd never completed it successfully. The water was cold, not cold like a swimming pool. Cold like the ocean had reached up and wrapped fingers around his chest. The kind of cold that made muscles seize and minds panic. He descended into blackness. The visibility was 0. Industrial fans churned the water into opaque chaos. He couldn't see his own hands. Panic hit at 15 seconds. The old terror. The memory of Hell Week. The cold that had broken him twice. He felt his chest tighten, his breath quicken. The regulator delivering air he couldn't seem to use. 40 seconds. He hadn't moved. Couldn't move. Frozen in the dark while the clock ran out. He surfaced at 62 seconds. No marker. Drill failed. Margaret stood at the pool edge, stopwatch in hand, face revealing nothing. Standard is 90 seconds. You surfaced at 62 without completing the objective. Reset. The visibility is impossible. No one could. Petty Officer Torres. Demonstrate. A woman emerged from the shadows. Young, fit, the same SEAL trident on her wetsuit. She couldn't be older than 28. Torres slipped into the water without a splash, descended into the same blackness, the same churning chaos, the same impossible conditions. She surfaced at 47 seconds, marker in hand. Questions, Margaret asked. Mercer had none. Just a growing understanding that the gap between himself and people like Torres, people like Sullivan, wasn't just training, it was fundamental. They operated on a level he couldn't reach. Reset, Lieutenant. Try again. He tried again. Failed at 71 seconds. Reset. Tried again. Failed at 68. Reset. Tried again. Failed at 59. By noon, he'd attempted the drill 14 times. Never once completed it. Never once came close to standard. Derek and Ryan had both passed by their third attempt. They stood to the side now, watching him fail over and over, their expressions carefully neutral. Dismissed for lunch, Margaret said. We resume at 1300. Same drill until completion or medical limitation. Mercer hauled himself out of the pool. His arms felt like lead. His lungs burned. His mind screamed questions he couldn't answer. Commander Sullivan, she turned. Ma'am, permission to speak freely. Denied. You may speak according to protocol. He swallowed the curse rising in his throat. Ma'am, these conditions are designed to make me fail. The visibility. The current. No one could... Petty Officer Torres completed it in 47 seconds. She's a trained SEAL. You're a man who applied twice to become a trained SEAL and quit both times because the conditions were too difficult. The words hit like bullets. This drill is standard. The conditions are standard. The only non-standard element in this equation is you. She stepped closer. You've spent 3 years blaming the system for your failures, blaming diversity initiatives, blaming women, blaming everyone except the man in the mirror who rang the bell because the water was cold. That's not fair. Fair has nothing to do with it, Lieutenant. Either you can meet the standard or you can't. Today suggests you can't. Tomorrow might be different. The choice is yours. She walked away. Mercer stood dripping on the pool deck, watching her go, feeling something break inside his chest that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. The afternoon was worse. Underwater equipment recovery. 15-meter depth. 30-second time limit. Retrieve a weighted dummy representing a wounded teammate. Simple in theory, brutal in practice. The dummy weighed 80 pounds. The current fought every movement. The cold sapped strength like a vampire drinking life. Mercer failed. Again, and again, and again. Derek passed on his second attempt. Ryan on his fourth. They both looked away when Mercer surfaced empty-handed for the 11th time. At 1600, Margaret called the Evolution. Final assessment for Day 1. Petty officers. Morrison and Oakes have met minimum standards and will proceed to advanced training tomorrow. Lieutenant Mercer has failed to meet minimum standards on either primary drill. She made a note on her clipboard. Lieutenant Mercer will report at 0500 tomorrow for remedial training. Dismissed. 500. An hour before everyone else. Extra time to fail in front of even more witnesses. Mercer's hands curled into fists. The rage was back. The familiar heat that had made him swing at O'Malley's. Something you want to say, Lieutenant? Her voice was mild, almost friendly, like she was inviting him to make another mistake. He unclenched his fists. No, ma'am. Good. Then I suggest you get some rest. Tomorrow will be harder. She walked away without waiting for a response. Mercer stood on the pool deck as the facility emptied around him. Derek and Ryan had already left. No one looked back. No one offered support. He was alone. The way he'd been alone in Hell Week when the cold finally broke him. The way he'd be alone when this training finally destroyed what was left of his career. That night, he called his uncle. Kyle, I was just about to call you. What's happening out there? She's destroying me, the Sullivan woman. She's got me in some dive training program I can't pass. She's documenting everything, making me fail in front of witnesses, making examples out of... Slow down. Tell me exactly what's happening. Mercer explained. The transfer, the impossible standards, the repeated failures, the bruise on Sullivan's face that she wore like a badge of honor in front of everyone. His uncle was quiet for a long moment. This is more serious than I thought. Can you get me out? I tried. Whitmore's not returning my calls. Neither is the base commander. Someone's built a wall around this situation and I'm having trouble seeing over it. Someone who has more pull than a senator. That's what I'm trying to find out. Sullivan's got connections I didn't anticipate. Pentagon, Joint Chiefs. There are whispers she's been planning something like this for months, building coalitions, calling in favors, setting up a scenario where one mistake from someone like you would give her everything she needed. Mercer felt ice form in his stomach. You're saying she planned this, all of it? I'm saying she's smarter than we gave her credit for, and more dangerous. Kyle, I need you to listen carefully. Do not give her any more ammunition. Do not swing at her again. Do not threaten her. Do not even look at her wrong. Everything you do is being documented. Everything will be used against you. So I just let her torture me. You survive, that's all. Survive the 2 weeks. Pass or fail doesn't matter. Just get through it without giving her grounds for court-martial. I'll work the political angle from here. And if I can't survive, if I wash out... His uncle hesitated. That hesitation said more than any words could. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Kyle, try not to let it happen. This family has a reputation to protect, a legacy. Your grandfather didn't serve 30 years, so his grandson could wash out of basic dive training. The call ended. Mercer sat in the darkness of his quarters, staring at the phone in his hands. His grandfather, the legendary Admiral James Mercer, 3 wars, countless commendations, the family name that had opened every door Kyle had ever walked through. That name meant nothing to Margaret Sullivan. She saw through it, through him, through every excuse he'd ever made and every protection he'd ever hidden behind. She saw the man who quit when things got hard, and she was going to make sure everyone else saw it too. Day 2 started at 0500. Mercer arrived to find Margaret already there, already in dive gear, already in the water running drills alone in the dark. She surfaced when she heard his footsteps, climbed out with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. Lieutenant, you're early. You said 500, ma'am. I said report at 0500. I didn't expect punctuality. Consider me pleasantly surprised. He couldn't tell if she was mocking him. Her face gave nothing away. Today we address your specific weaknesses: panic response under low visibility, breath control under stress, comfort in cold water. These are fundamental skills that should have been mastered before you ever applied to buds. I know that, ma'am. Do you? Because your actions at O'Malley's suggest otherwise. A man who'd mastered his panic response wouldn't swing at a 54-year-old woman because she hurt his feelings. The words landed like hammer blows. That's not why You swung because you lost control. Because your ego overrode your judgment. Because in the moment, violence felt easier than admitting I was right about you. She stepped closer. That's the same instinct that made you ring the bell in Hell Week. The same weakness wearing different clothes. You don't know anything about Hell Week. I graduated Hell Week, top of my class, 32 years ago in conditions harder than anything you faced. I didn't quit when the cold got bad. I didn't quit when my lungs filled with salt water. I didn't quit when men twice my size told me I didn't belong. She tapped her trident. This isn't a participation trophy, Lieutenant. This is proof that I passed every test the teams could throw at me, every test that broke you. Mercer felt the rage building again, the heat in his chest, the tension in his fists. Margaret saw it. Of course she saw it. There it is, the anger, the violence looking for a target. That's your pattern, Lieutenant. Get frustrated, get violent, blame someone else. It's why you failed. It's why you'll keep failing. I'm not going to hit you. I know, because now you understand there are cameras, witnesses, consequences. But the impulse is still there. The weakness is still there. And until you address it, you'll never be anything more than a senator's nephew who couldn't hack it. She handed him a weighted belt. 20 minutes in the cold pool, water temperature 52 degrees. You will remain submerged to the neck for the full duration. You will not quit. You will not surface early. You will sit with your panic until you learn to master it instead of being mastered by it. And if I can't, then you can't, and we'll know exactly what you are. She walked to the pool edge. Waited. Mercer put on the weighted belt. Felt the cold of the water even before he entered it. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to walk away, to call his uncle and demand extraction. But something else spoke louder, something that sounded almost like pride. He entered the water. The cold hit like a physical assault. His lungs seized, his muscles cramped. Every nerve ending screamed for warmth. Breathe through it, Margaret said. Slow, controlled. The cold is not your enemy. Your reaction to it is. He tried, failed. His breath came in gasps. His body shook so hard the water rippled. 3 minutes. An eternity. He couldn't last 3 more seconds. Your father was military, wasn't he? Army, served in Desert Storm. The question caught him off guard. How did you... I read files too, Lieutenant. Your father was decorated, served with honor, never quit. He died when I was 12. I know, roadside bomb, Fallujah. He re-enlisted after 9/11, even though he'd already done his 20. Left a wife and son behind because he believed some things were worth dying for. Mercer's teeth chattered, his vision blurred with cold. Why are you telling me this? Because your father would be ashamed of who you've become. Not because you failed, buds. Failure isn't shame. Because you blamed everyone except yourself. Because you used your uncle's power to coast instead of your father's legacy to rise. You didn't know my father. I knew men like him. I served with men like him. I carried men like him out of firefights and held their hands while they died. Her voice softened just slightly. Your father understood something you never learned. The standard isn't the enemy. It's the ally. It's what separates people who can be trusted with lives from people who can't. 7 minutes. Mercer realized he'd stopped shaking. The cold was still there, still brutal, but something had shifted. Some wall had cracked. Why did you let me hit you? He asked. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Because you needed to see who you really were, and so did everyone else. You could have blocked it, could have put me on the ground. Yes. So why didn't you? Because a blocked punch is a story you can spin, a punch that lands on camera in front of witnesses that you can't explain away. That's truth. Undeniable. Documented. the kind of truth that even a senator can't make disappear. Mercer absorbed this, the strategic brilliance of it, the long game she'd been playing while he thought he was in control. "You're destroying my career." "No, Lieutenant. You destroyed your career 3 years ago when you quit Hell Week and blamed the program. You destroyed it again on Friday when you punched me. I'm just making sure the destruction is visible enough that no one can pretend it didn't happen." 12 minutes. His father would be ashamed. The thought circled his mind like a shark. His father, who'd never quit anything. Who'd gone back to war at 42 because his country called. Who'd died believing his son would carry on the family honor. And here Kyle was, in a cold pool, being taught by the woman he'd assaulted, failing standards his father could have passed in his sleep. 15 minutes. Something broke in his chest, not his will, something else. Something that had been holding the truth at bay for 3 years. He wasn't good enough. Not because of politics, not because of lowered standards, not because women had invaded his space. He just wasn't good enough. 20 minutes, surface. Mercer climbed out of the pool. His body was numb. His mind was strangely clear. Margaret handed him a towel. Her expression was unreadable. "You didn't quit." "No, ma'am. First time for everything." She walked away to prepare the next drill. Mercer stood dripping on the deck, wrapped in a towel that couldn't touch the cold in his core. Something had changed. He didn't know what yet, but for the first time since Hell Week, he felt almost like he wanted to find out. The change in Mercer didn't go unnoticed. Derek was the first to mention it 3 days into the training. They were gearing up for another underwater evolution, and Mercer hadn't complained once, hadn't made excuses, hadn't blamed the equipment or the conditions or the woman running the program. "You okay, man?" Derek asked quietly. "Fine." "You're being weird, quiet. It's freaking me out." Mercer pulled on his fins. His hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped sometime after day 4. "I'm just trying to get through this." "That's what I mean. Since when do you just try to get through anything? Usually you're calling your uncle, threatening lawsuits, making everyone's life hell." "Maybe I'm tired of being that guy." Derek stared at him. Ryan, standing nearby, exchanged a look with Derek that said they both thought Mercer had finally cracked. Maybe he had. The cold pool had done something to him. Those 20 minutes sitting in his own panic, unable to escape, unable to blame anyone else. Margaret's words about his father circling his mind like sharks. Your father would be ashamed. She was right. He knew she was right. And knowing it had broken something loose in his chest that he'd been protecting for 3 years. "Formation," Margaret called. They lined up. 8 trainees now, not just the 3 of them. Word had spread about the program, about the commander who'd let a man punch her in the face, and then systematically dismantled his career. Other personnel had requested transfer in. Petty Officer Torres stood at the end of the line. She'd been watching Mercer with curiosity for days. Like she was trying to figure out if he was genuinely changing or just putting on a show. He didn't know the answer himself. "Today's evolution is team-based," Margaret announced. 2-person rescue simulation. 1 swimmer, 1 victim. 30-meter swim through 0 visibility. Victim is non-responsive. You must maintain airway control descent and surface within time standard. She paused. "Lieutenant Mercer, you're partnered with Petty Officer Torres." Torres's expression flickered. Just for a moment. Something that might have been disappointment or might have been dread. "Ma'am, I'd prefer a different partner." Noted and declined. This isn't about preference. In combat, you work with whoever's available. Sometimes that's someone you don't like. Sometimes it's someone you don't trust. You learn to make it work, or people die. Torres nodded. Professional, controlled, but her eyes when they met Mercer's were cold. "Don't slow me down," she said. "I won't. And don't touch me any more than the drill requires." Understood. They geared up in silence. The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. Everyone in the facility could feel it. Margaret watched with those evaluating eyes that never missed anything. The drill began. Mercer descended into darkness. Torres was ahead of him, playing the victim. At 20 meters, she went limp, dead weight in the water. His job was simple. Get to her, control her airway, Bring her up. The old panic was there, waiting. The darkness pressed in. The current fought every movement. His lungs burned with the urge to surface. But something else was there too, something he'd discovered in the cold pool. The panic was just a feeling. Feelings weren't facts. He could feel terror and still move. Could feel the urge to quit and still refuse. He reached Torres, secured her airway, began the ascent. Her body was rigid against his. Not the limpness of an actual unconscious victim. She was testing him, making it harder than it needed to be. He adapted, adjusted his grip, found the rhythm. They surfaced at 41 seconds. Time standard is 45, Margaret said. Pass. Mercer couldn't remember the last time he'd passed anything in this program. The word felt foreign, almost suspicious. Torres pulled away from him the moment they surfaced, swam to the ladder without looking back. But later, when they were gearing down, she approached him. You didn't panic. No. The first day you panicked at 15 seconds. Now you're completing 30-meter rescues under standard. I had a good teacher. Torres studied him, searching for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. She's not your enemy, you know, Commander Sullivan. She's just showing you what you are. Most people don't survive that clearly. She ruined my career. You ruined your career when you punched her. She's just making sure you can't hide from it. Torres walked away. Mercer stood alone, water dripping from his gear, thinking about what she'd said. Making sure you can't hide from it. Is that what this was? Not punishment, not revenge, just exposure. A mirror held up so steadily he couldn't look away. The hearing came on day 10. Mercer had almost forgotten about it. The training had consumed everything. Wake up, fail, try again, fail less. Try again. Inch towards something that felt almost like competence. Then the summons arrived. Disciplinary hearing. Oro 900 tomorrow. Conference room B. Uniform dress. His uncle called that night. I'm flying in. This has gone far enough. Uncle James, you don't need to. I absolutely need to. This Sullivan woman has made a mockery of our family name. I've got lawyers' media contacts. We're going to turn this into a story about military overreach and persecution of good servicemen. What if I deserve it? Silence on the line. The kind of silence that said he'd finally surprised the unshakable Senator James Mercer. Excuse me. The persecution. What if I deserve it? I punched her, Uncle James. In a bar full of witnesses. Cameras everywhere. She didn't attack me. She just told me the truth about myself and I couldn't handle it. Kyle, whatever she's done to you in that training program, whatever psychological manipulation, she taught me to sit in cold water for 20 minutes without quitting. She taught me to complete drills I failed for 3 years. She made me better. She's destroying you. She's showing me who I was. There's a difference. His uncle's voice hardened. I'm coming to that hearing. And when I'm done, Commander Sullivan will regret ever crossing this family. The call ended. Mercer set his phone down and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not of the hearing, of what his uncle was about to do. The conference room was packed. Mercer arrived at 0845 to find every seat filled. Military personnel, JAG officers, base commanders. And in the front row, Senator James Mercer, in a suit that cost more than most enlisted salaries. Margaret Sullivan sat at the respondents' table, calm, composed. The bruise on her face had faded to a greenish yellow, but the photos being distributed showed it in full purple and black glory. Colonel Whitmore presided. His expression suggested he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. This hearing will come to order. We are here to address charges of assault against a superior officer, conduct unbecoming and pattern of hostile behavior. Lieutenant Kyle Mercer. How do you plead? Mercer's lawyer provided by his uncle stood. Not guilty. Sir, my client was provoked. Commander Sullivan deliberately engineered a confrontation designed to... I'd like to change my plea. Every head in the room turned. The lawyer's face went white. Lieutenant, we discussed guilty. The word dropped like a bomb. Senator Mercer shot to his feet. This is unacceptable. My nephew is clearly under duress. He's been subjected to psychological manipulation for 10 days by the woman who provoked the original incident. I demand a continuance." Colonel Whitmore's gavel cracked. "Senator Mercer, you are a guest in this proceeding. You will sit down and remain silent, or you will be removed." "I am a United States Senator. You cannot." "I can and I will. Military justice is not subject to political interference. Sit down." The senator sat. His face was the color of raw beef. Whitmore turned to Mercer. "Lieutenant, you understand the implications of a guilty plea. You're waiving your right to defense. The evidence against you will be entered without challenge." "I understand, sir." "And you still wish to plead guilty?" Mercer looked across the room. Margaret Sullivan sat motionless, watching, her eyes giving nothing away. "She told me my father would be ashamed of who I've become. She was right. He didn't raise a man who makes excuses. He raised a man who takes responsibility." He straightened his spine. "I'm guilty. I assaulted Commander Sullivan in a public venue with multiple witnesses. I did it because she told me truths I wasn't ready to hear. I did it because my ego was more important to me than my honor. And I've spent 10 days learning exactly how unworthy I am of the uniform I wear." The room was silent. "Enter the plea," Whitmore said quietly. "The evidence will be presented." What followed was systematic annihilation. Video from O'Malley's. 15 different angles. Mercer's fist connecting with Margaret's face, her blood on the floor, his laughter as she fell. Video from the equipment bay. The second assault. 3.2 seconds of Margaret dismantling him and his friends with the precision of a surgeon. Training records. Mercer's repeated failures. His pattern of blaming equipment conditions instructors. His gradual improvement under Margaret's supervision. Medical reports. The extent of Margaret's injuries. The professional assessment that she could have easily avoided the assault, but chose not to. And then came the testimony. "Commander Sullivan, please describe your service record for the panel." Margaret stood. No notes, no hesitation. 32 years active duty. First female graduate of BUDS. 6 combat deployments. 3 Silver Stars. 2 Purple Hearts. Lead operator on 17 classified missions. Instructor certifications in combat diving close quarters, combat tactical medicine, and advanced interrogation resistance. She paused. "I have trained over 2,000 special operations personnel. I have carried wounded teammates out of hostile territory on 3 separate occasions. I have been shot 4 times, stabbed twice, and had my oxygen supply compromised at 30 feet during an underwater extraction. And on the night of the assault, I was reading a book, drinking cold coffee. Lieutenant Mercer approached me uninvited. He insulted my service record. He questioned whether I'd earned my qualifications. When I responded with facts about his failed BUDS attempts, he struck me. Could you have prevented the assault? Easily. I saw the punch coming from the moment he clenched his fist. I had approximately 2 seconds to evade, block, or counter. I chose not to. Murmurs in the room. The senator leaned forward. Why? Because I needed documentation. I needed witnesses. I needed video evidence that couldn't be explained away by a senator's phone calls. She looked directly at James Mercer. Your nephew has been protected his entire career. He failed BUDS twice and blamed the program instead of himself. He was transferred to administrative roles that kept him away from any genuine testing. He was on track for promotions he hadn't earned because his family name opened doors his ability never could. Objection, the senator's lawyer called out. This is speculation about... It's documented fact, Margaret cut in. I have the transfer requests, the personnel files, the evaluations that were mysteriously upgraded after calls from your office. Every accommodation, every shortcut, every time Kyle Mercer was allowed to fail upward because his last name mattered more than his performance. She stood straighter. I didn't trap your nephew, Senator. I gave him an opportunity to reveal himself. He chose violence, twice, and now he's facing the consequences that should have come years ago. You manipulated him. I existed as a woman who succeeded where he failed. That was manipulation enough for a man like him. Colonel Whitmore intervened. Commander Sullivan, in your professional assessment, what consequences are appropriate for Lieutenant Mercer's actions? Margaret was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was measured, careful, almost kind. 10 days ago, I would have recommended dishonorable discharge, full criminal prosecution, career termination, and public record of his assault. And now I'm not certain. The room buzzed with surprise. Even the senator looked confused. Lieutenant Mercer changed during training. Not completely, not enough to excuse what he did. But something shifted. He stopped making excuses. He started completing drills he'd failed for years. He admitted truths about himself that most men would rather die than speak aloud. She looked at Mercer directly. The man who punched me at O'Malley's was a coward hiding behind his uncle's power. The man who pled guilty today is something else. I'm not sure what yet. But I don't think destroying him serves anyone. So, your recommendation, general discharge, not dishonorable. He made a serious mistake, but he's also the first person in his family to take responsibility for it. That counts for something. And the senator's attempts to interfere, Margaret's expression hardened. That's a separate matter. Senator Mercer has used his political position to manipulate military personnel records, suppress legitimate complaints, and protect his nephew from appropriate consequences for years. Those actions are documented, those records are preserved, and they're already in the hands of the Inspector General. The senator's face went gray. You can't. I already have. This hearing is about Lieutenant Mercer's assault. The investigation into your corruption will proceed independently. And Senator, I should mention I have friends on the Armed Services Committee. Friends who are very interested in how a sitting senator has been abusing his oversight position to benefit his family. She sat down. The room was absolutely silent. Colonel Whitmore cleared his throat. We'll take a 30-minute recess. When we return, I'll deliver the panel's decision. The room emptied slowly. The senator cornered his lawyers in the hallway, voice rising in fury. Mercer stood alone, watching Margaret Sullivan walk to the window. He approached her. Not aggressive, not angry, just a man who needed to understand. Why did you do that? She didn't turn around. Do what? Recommend general discharge. You could have destroyed me. You had everything you needed. I could have. Yes. So why didn't you? Margaret finally turned. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something. Because destruction wasn't the point. Exposure was. Your uncle needed to see what he'd created. The military needed to see how privilege corrupts. And you needed to see who you really were without all the protection. And now you're someone who pled guilty when it cost you everything. Someone who admitted his father would be ashamed and then changed his behavior. Someone who completed a 30-meter rescue without panicking. She almost smiled. That's not the man who punched me, Lieutenant. That's someone else. Someone who might actually be worth something if he works at it. I don't know how to be that person. Nobody does when they start. You just wake up every day and make the choice again. That's all anyone does. That's all I've ever done. Mercer felt something crack in his chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. I'm sorry, for the bar, for everything. I know. Does that matter? It's a start. The recess ended. They filed back in. Colonel Whitmore read the decision. Lieutenant Kyle Mercer, you are found guilty of assault against a superior officer and conduct unbecoming. Given the evidence presented, including Commander Sullivan's recommendation, this panel sentences you to general discharge from the United States Navy. You will retain no rank or benefits. Your service record will reflect today's proceedings. Mercer nodded. The weight of it settled on his shoulders like a physical thing. Additionally, this panel recommends investigation into improper interference in military personnel matters by Senator James Mercer. Those findings will be forwarded to appropriate oversight authorities. The senator stood. His face was purple with rage. This is a travesty, a political witch hunt orchestrated by a woman who... Senator Mercer, Whitmore's voice cut like a blade. You are dismissed from these proceedings. If you continue to make statements impugning the integrity of this panel or any service member present, you will be escorted out by military police and barred from this installation." The senator looked around the room. No one met his eyes. No one was coming to his defense. His power had finally hit a wall it couldn't breach. He left without another word. The room emptied slowly after that. JAG officers collecting paperwork, personnel filtering out in small groups. Derek and Ryan approached Mercer hesitantly. "Kyle, man, we're sorry." "Don't be. I earned this." "What are you going to do now?" Mercer looked around the room. At the uniform he'd worn for years without deserving it. At the SEAL candidates he'd resented for having what he couldn't earn. At Margaret Sullivan, who was gathering her files with the same methodical precision she brought to everything. "I don't know. Something different. Something my father might actually respect." He walked toward the door, stopped, turned back. "Commander Sullivan." She looked up. "Thank you for seeing something worth saving, even after everything." Margaret studied him for a long moment. "Don't thank me, Lieutenant. Former Lieutenant. Prove me right. That's the only gratitude worth having." He nodded, walked out. The door closed behind him. Margaret stood alone in the empty conference room. Sunlight streaming through the windows, thinking about the boy who'd become a bully, who'd become something uncertain. She'd broken him. Then watched him rebuild. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was forward motion. And sometimes that was enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from Master Chief Crawford. "Senator's on the warpath. He's not going to take this quietly." Margaret typed back, "I know. Neither am I." She gathered her files, walked out of the conference room, past the MPs, past the administrative staff, into the sunlight of a California afternoon. Somewhere behind her, a senator was making phone calls that wouldn't be returned. Somewhere ahead of her, a new generation of candidates was waiting to be tested. And Margaret Sullivan had never been more certain that she was exactly where she needed to be. The war wasn't over, but this battle was won. 3 months passed like water through fingers. Margaret Sullivan barely noticed the time. Training cycles came and went. New candidates arrived. Most failed. Some succeeded. The rhythm of it was as natural to her as breathing. The senator's investigation had gone quiet. Not resolved, just buried under layers of bureaucratic process that would take years to unravel. He'd stopped making phone calls, stopped threatening lawsuits, stopped trying to destroy her. She'd won, at least for now. But victory felt hollow in a way she hadn't expected. "You're thinking too loud." Master Chief Crawford dropped into the chair across from her in the mess hall. His coffee was black. His expression was knowing. "I'm eating breakfast." "You're staring at eggs like they personally offended you. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Maggie, 30 years. I know when you're lying." She set down her fork, looked at him with eyes that had seen too much to hide anything from someone who'd been there for most of it. "I keep thinking about Mercer. The kid who punched you. Why?" "Because I don't know what happened to him." Crawford leaned back. His eyebrows rose. "Since when do you track the people you break?" "I didn't break him. I showed him what he was. There's a difference." "Same result usually." "Not this time. He changed. In the training, in the hearing. He pled guilty when his uncle had bought him an acquittal. He thanked me for saving something in him. And I don't know if it stuck. I don't know if he's building something or falling apart. I don't know if what I did helped or just made everything worse." Crawford was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping. "Thought you might want to see this." Margaret unfolded it. A small article from a California community college newsletter. Kyle Mercer, engineering student, 4.0 GPA, volunteer at the VA hospital. Quote, "My father served, my grandfather served. I couldn't serve the way they did, but I can still build things that matter." Her throat tightened. "Where did you get this?" "His mother sent it, Carol Mercer. She wanted you to know her son is doing okay. She wanted to thank you." "Thank me, I ended his career." "You gave him something his career never did." A reason to be better. Margaret stared at the clipping, at the photo of Mercer in civilian clothes smiling in a way she'd never seen during training. His uncle resigned from the Senate last month. Ethics investigation got too hot. He's claiming health reasons, but everyone knows. I didn't intend for that. No, you just exposed the truth and let the chips fall. Funny how that works. Crawford stood, squeezed her shoulder. Stop carrying them all, Maggie. The ones you save, the ones you break, the ones who break themselves. You did your job. What they do with it after is their business. He walked away. Margaret folded the clipping carefully, tucked it into her pocket. Some victories took longer to feel like victories. Maybe this one would get there eventually. The knock on her office door came at 1400. Enter. Derek Morrison and Ryan Oakes stepped inside. Both wore dress uniforms. Both looked nervous enough to shake. Margaret set down her pen. She hadn't seen either of them since the hearing. Gentlemen. Ma'am? Derek spoke first. His voice cracked slightly. We came to apologize, Ryan finished. Properly. Not like before. For real. Margaret studied them. They'd aged in 3 months, not physically, but in their eyes. Something had changed. Sit down. They sat, ramrod straight, like candidates in an interview. I've read your records since the hearing. Both of you completed dive certification. Both received commendations from your unit commanders. Both were recommended for advanced training. Derek nodded. Yes, ma'am. And that suggests you learned something from our time together. We learned everything, ma'am. Ryan's voice was steady now. We learned that following weakness is a choice. That the standard isn't the enemy. That being good enough isn't enough. You have to be better. Those are words. Words are easy. We know. Derek leaned forward. That's why we're here. Not to give you words. To give you this. He handed her a folder. Margaret opened it. 2 letters. Handwritten. Addressed to Senator James Mercer. She read them in silence. Both letters acknowledged their role in the bar incident. Both took full responsibility for following Mercer's lead. Both explicitly stated that Commander Sullivan had acted with complete professionalism throughout the training program. Both requested that any investigation into Senator Mercer include their testimony about his nephew's behavior and their own complicity in it. You sent these 2 months ago, right after the hearing. Why? Derek met her eyes. For the first time, there was no fear there, just resolve. Because you were right about following weakness, about choosing who we want to be. We chose wrong at O'Malley's. We chose wrong again when we let Kyle take the fall alone. These letters were us choosing different. Ryan nodded. We don't expect forgiveness, ma'am. We didn't come here for that. We came here because you needed to know that what you taught us stuck, that we're different now, that it mattered. Margaret closed the folder, set it on her desk. It always matters, even when you can't see the results, even when the people you're teaching don't want to learn. She stood, walked to the window. I've trained over 2,000 operators. Most of them I never see again. They go off into the world, into combat, into lives I know nothing about. I don't know which lessons stuck, which ones they forgot, which ones saved their lives or got them killed. She turned back. But every once in a while someone comes back. Someone tells me it mattered. That's the only payment this job offers, and it's enough. Derek's eyes were wet. He didn't try to hide it. We wanted to be SEALs, both of us, for years. We thought that was the highest calling, the ultimate goal. And now we know that being a SEAL isn't about the trident. It's about the standard, the willingness to be held accountable, the choice to be better than you were yesterday. Ryan stood, straightened his uniform. We're not SEALs, ma'am. We'll probably never be, but we're Marines who understand what that means now. That's because of you. Margaret nodded. Once. The smallest acknowledgement. Don't thank me. Don't apologize anymore. Just do your jobs. Do them well. Pass on what you learned to the ones who come after you. Yes, ma'am. They moved toward the door. Morrison. Derek turned. Your letter mentioned you're applying for officer candidate school. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I want to lead. Properly. The way you showed us, it should be done. You'll make a good officer if you remember what weakness looks like and never follow it again. Derek's jaw tightened, not with anger, with determination. Never again, ma'am, I promise. They left. Margaret stood alone in her office holding the folder with their letters. Crawford was wrong. She didn't carry them all, but she remembered them, every single one, and sometimes that was heavy enough. The call came at 2200. Margaret was reading in her quarters when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Something made her answer. Commander Sullivan, it's Kyle. Kyle Mercer. She sat up. The book fell forgotten to the floor. How did you get this number? Master Chief Crawford. I called the base, asked to speak to him, explained why. He gave me your number. And why would he do that? Because I asked him to, because I needed to tell you something. Margaret was silent, waiting. I started community college, engineering, structural design. I want to build things, bridges, buildings, things that help people instead of... He stopped. She heard him breathing, struggling. I started volunteering at the VA, working with guys who came back broken, listening to their stories, helping where I can. I heard. You did. Your mother sent a clipping. Silence on the line. When Mercer spoke again, his voice was thick. She wasn't supposed to do that. I didn't want you to think I was trying to, I don't know, show off, prove something. What were you trying to do? Be different. Be someone my father would recognize. Someone who takes responsibility instead of running from it. Margaret closed her eyes, remembered the young man who'd swung at her in a bar full of witnesses, the terrified boy who'd broken in the cold pool, the soldier who'd pled guilty when everyone expected him to lie. Are you calling for absolution? No. I know you can't give me that. I'm calling because I needed you to know that what you did, the training, the hearing, all of it, it saved my life. I didn't save your life. I ended your career. My career was going to end anyway. Either by failure or by my uncle finally running out of strings to pull. You gave me something else. You showed me who I actually was underneath all the protection and excuses. And yeah, it was ugly. But at least it was real. He paused. I spent my whole life pretending to be something I wasn't. A warrior like my grandfather. A hero like my father. You showed me I was neither. And for the first time, I could start building something true. Margaret didn't know what to say. This wasn't how these conversations usually went. Usually there was anger, blame, excuses that never ended. This was something else. What do you want from me, Kyle? Nothing. I just needed you to know it worked. The lesson you were teaching, it worked. And your uncle? We don't speak anymore. His choice. He can't forgive me for pleading guilty, for ruining his political career, for not being the weapon he wanted me to be. Does that bother you? Every day. He raised me after my father died. He was all I had, but he was wrong. About the military, about standards, about you. And loving someone doesn't mean you get to pretend they're not wrong. Margaret felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been tight for a long time. You're going to be okay, Kyle. I don't know about okay, but I'm going to be better. That's enough for now. That's all anyone can ask for. Silence stretched between them, comfortable somehow. The silence of two people who'd been through something together and come out different on the other side. Can I ask you something, Commander? Go ahead. When you let me hit you, when you planned the whole thing, were you afraid, even a little? Margaret considered the question, really considered it. No, I was too focused on the outcome to be afraid. Fear is for when you don't have a plan. I always have a plan. What if I'd hit harder? What if I'd really hurt you? Then the lesson would have been the same, just more expensive. Kyle laughed, a real laugh. the first one she'd ever heard from him. "You're kind of terrifying, you know that. I've been told." In a good way. In a, "I'm glad you're on our side" way. There's only one side, Kyle. The side that believes in standards, that holds people accountable, that refuses to let weakness win just because it's easier. I know. I'm starting to understand that now. The conversation wound down after that. Simple words. Goodbyes that felt more like beginnings. When Margaret hung up, she sat in the darkness of her quarters for a long time. She'd been doing this for 32 years, training people, breaking them down, building them back, watching them go off into worlds she'd never see, carrying lessons she'd never know if they remembered. Most of the time, she never found out what happened to them. Tonight, she knew. One person out of thousands. One life that had changed because she'd refused to let weakness win. It wasn't much, but it was something. Torres found her at the beach the next morning. Margaret was swimming, long, powerful strokes that cut through the cold Pacific like she'd been born to it. Torres watched from the shore until she finished. "You're out here early." "Couldn't sleep." "The Mercer thing." Margaret toweled off. Torres had been there through all of it, the training, the hearing, the aftermath. She'd earned the right to ask questions. "He called last night. He's doing okay." "I heard. Crawford told me." "Crawford tells you everything." "Crawford thinks you need someone watching your back who isn't 60 years old with bad knees." Margaret almost smiled. "And that's you, if you'll have me." Torres straightened. "I put in a request for transfer to your unit, permanent assignment, instructor training under your supervision." "Why?" "Because you're the best. Because everything I want to become you already are. Because if I'm going to spend my career teaching people to be SEALs, I want to learn from someone who knows what that actually means." Margaret studied her. Young, fit, fierce. Everything Margaret had been 30 years ago. "You know what they'll say? That you're riding my coattails. That whatever you achieve is because I handed it to you. Let them say it. I'll answer with results, just like you always have. It won't be easy. I don't want easy. I want good." Margaret looked out at the ocean. The same ocean that had tested her 3 decades ago. The same water that had broken better people than Kyle Mercer. "My husband died in Afghanistan 12 years ago. Same operation that got me my 2nd Silver Star." Torres was silent, waiting. "He was a SEAL too. Better than me in some ways, worse in others. We had 7 years together before a roadside bomb took him. No children. Just the teams. Just the work. I didn't know." "Nobody does. I don't talk about it. But if you're going to learn from me, you need to understand something." She turned to face Torres. "This life costs everything. Relationships, peace, the ability to be normal. You give it all to the standard, and the standard gives you nothing back except the knowledge that you met it. Is it worth it? Some days. Other days, I'm 54 years old, swimming alone in a cold ocean, wondering what I would have been if I'd chosen differently. And today..." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Today, a young man I helped destroy called to thank me for saving his life. Today, 2 Marines I thought I'd broken came to show me they'd rebuilt themselves stronger. Today, someone who might be as good as me asked to learn what I know." She almost smiled. "Today, it's worth it." Torres nodded, something passing between them that didn't need words. "When do we start?" "You already started. The moment you decided you wanted this. Everything after is just repetition." They walked back toward base together. 2 women, 2 generations, 1 standard. The ocean rolled on behind them, endless and indifferent. And somewhere in California, a former lieutenant was building bridges. Not the kind you walk on, the kind you become. 6 months changed everything and nothing. Margaret Sullivan stood before a new class of BUDS candidates at Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado. 30 faces stared back at her. Young, terrified, burning with the same desperate need to prove themselves that she'd carried into this exact spot 32 years ago. She was no longer a consultant. The promotion had come through 2 months after the Mercer hearing. First female permanent instructor in the program's history. Another first. Another wait. She didn't want to be first. She just wanted to be good enough. I'm Commander Sullivan. For the next 6 months, I'm going to push you harder than you've ever been pushed. I'm going to find your breaking point and make you stand there until you realize breaking is a choice, not an inevitability. The words came automatically. She'd said them 100 times, 1,000. Some of you will quit. Most of you actually. That's not failure, that's honesty. Better to quit here than fail your teammates downrange. A hand went up. Young candidate, maybe 23. Nervous energy radiating off him like heat. Ma'am, is it true you're the SEAL who took down 3 Marines in 6 seconds? The room held its breath. Margaret looked at him with those calm, evaluating eyes that had seen men die in 12 countries. It's true I defended myself when assaulted. The timeline is accurate. She paused. The lesson is this. If you ever find yourself needing to defend yourself or your teammates, do it with precision, documentation, and complete commitment. Half measures get people killed. Full measures end threats. She moved on before anyone could ask follow-up questions. Started walking them through their first day. The standards, the expectations, the reality that most of them wouldn't make it. Torres stood at the back of the room watching, learning, taking notes on technique and delivery, and the 1,000 small things that made the difference between an instructor who trained operators and one who just gave lectures. When the candidates filed out for their first physical evolution, Torres approached. You're different with them than you were with Mercer's group. Different how? Softer, not in a bad way, more patient. Margaret considered this. Mercer needed to be broken because he'd never been broken before. These candidates don't need breaking. They need building. Different approaches for different problems. How do you know which is which? Experience, observation. A lot of mistakes over 32 years. Torres nodded, filed the lesson away. There's something else. Someone's here to see you, waiting in your office. Who? She wouldn't give a name, said you'd know her when you saw her. Margaret's brow furrowed. She didn't like surprises. Surprises in her world usually meant someone was about to die. She walked to her office, opened the door. A woman sat in the visitor's chair, late 50s, silver hair, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in uniform, even though she wore civilian clothes now. Margaret recognized her immediately. Admiral Chen. Commander Sullivan, or should I say, the ghost herself. Admiral Patricia Chen had been the highest-ranking woman in naval special warfare before her retirement 3 years ago. She'd blazed trails Margaret had followed. Broken barriers Margaret had inherited. Fought battles Margaret had benefited from. Ma'am, I had no idea you were coming. That was intentional. I wanted to see you without the ceremony, without the politics. Chen stood, extended her hand. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. Margaret shook it, felt the strength still present in that grip despite the years. The honor is mine, Admiral. Retired Admiral, just Patricia now, and please sit. We have a lot to discuss. They sat across from each other, 2 women who'd climbed the same mountain by different routes. I watched the Mercer hearing footage, Chen said. All of it. The bar assault, the training documentation, your testimony. It wasn't my finest moment. It was exactly your finest moment. You let that boy hit you because you knew it was the only way to make the truth undeniable. You took the damage so the documentation would be unassailable. You sacrificed your comfort for a larger purpose. Chen leaned forward. That's what leadership looks like. Not the pretty kind they put in training manuals. The real kind. The kind that costs something. Margaret didn't know how to respond. Compliments had always made her uncomfortable. I didn't come here just to praise you, Chen continued. I came here because I need your help. With what? The future. Chen reached into her bag, pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. 3 years ago when I retired, I started a foundation, Women in Combat Operations. Our goal is to ensure that the women who follow us don't have to fight the same battles we did. Better support systems, better documentation of discrimination, better pathways to leadership. Margaret opened the folder. Financial reports, program summaries, lists of beneficiaries. This is impressive. It's a start, but we're missing something crucial. We have funding. We have political support. What we don't have is credibility on the ground. The women we're trying to help need to see role models, living proof that it's possible. Chen met her eyes. They need to see you. Me. You're the most decorated female special operator in history. You've trained more SEALs than anyone else active duty. You just publicly destroyed a senator's nephew for assaulting you and walked away with your career intact. Every woman who's ever been told she can't do something looks at you and sees proof that they're lying. I'm not a symbol, I'm just someone who refused to quit. That's exactly what makes you a symbol. You didn't set out to be first. You just did the work. And now every woman who comes after you has a path to follow. Margaret closed the folder, stared at the cover. What exactly are you asking me to do? Speak at events, at bases, at training facilities. Tell your story. Show them what's possible. I'm not a public speaker. You testified at a hearing that ended a senator's career. You seem capable enough. Margaret almost smiled. That was different. That was combat. This would be performance. Leadership is performance. Every time you stand in front of a class and tell them they can do more than they believe, that's performance. Every time you demonstrate a drill you've done 1,000 times like it's the first time, that's performance. Chen stood. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking you to show people who you already are. There's a difference. She headed for the door, stopped, turned back. The Mercer boy, Kyle. I heard he's doing well. He is. You could have destroyed him. The evidence was there. The support was there. Instead, you recommended leniency. Why? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Because destruction wasn't the point. Change was. He changed. That mattered more than punishment. Chen nodded slowly. That's why you're the right person for this foundation. You understand that winning isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about making them better, even when they don't deserve it. She left. Margaret sat alone with the folder, thinking about legacies and symbols and the weight of being first. Her phone buzzed. A text from Torres. Candidate Miller just set a new record on the obstacle course. Thought you'd want to know. Margaret typed back. Good. Push him harder tomorrow. Then she opened the folder again. Started reading. The call came 3 weeks later. Margaret was reviewing training evaluations when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. Commander Sullivan. Commander, this is Carol Mercer, Kyle's mother. Margaret straightened. She'd spoken to Carol once briefly after the hearing. A short conversation that had consisted mostly of awkward silences. Mrs. Mercer, is everything all right? Everything is wonderful. That's why I'm calling. Carol's voice was warm, lighter than Margaret remembered. Kyle graduated, top of his class in structural engineering. He got a job offer from a firm in San Francisco. They design earthquake-resistant buildings. That's excellent news. There's more. He proposed to his girlfriend last week, a woman he met volunteering at the VA. She's a nurse, former Army. They're getting married in the spring. Margaret felt something loosen in her chest, something she hadn't realized she'd been holding tight. I'm happy for him. He wanted me to call you. He said he'd feel strange doing it himself, but he wanted you to know. He said, Carol's voice caught. He said you're the reason he's alive. Not just physically, but actually alive. Living instead of just existing. I didn't do anything special. I just held him to a standard. That's exactly what special looks like, Commander. Holding someone to a standard when it would have been easier to let them fail. Believing they could be better when everyone else, including themselves, had given up. Carol paused. His father would have liked you. He was the same way. Never let anyone take the easy path. Never accepted excuses. Kyle hated it when he was young. Now he understands. Your husband sounds like he was a good man. He was, and so is my son. Now, because of you. The call ended. Margaret sat in silence, staring at nothing. 3 months ago, she'd wondered if any of it mattered. The training, the breaking, the rebuilding. Now she knew. It mattered. Not always. Not for everyone. But for Kyle Mercer, it had mattered enough to change the trajectory of his entire life. That was worth something. That was worth everything. Torres found her on the beach again that evening. Same spot. Same cold Pacific water. Same endless horizon. You're always out here. It's where I think best. What are you thinking about? Legacies. What we leave behind. Whether any of it matters. Torres dropped onto the sand beside her. The candidates are talking about you. The story's gotten around. The Mercer thing. The hearing. The 6-second takedown. They think you're some kind of superhero. I'm 54 years old with bad knees and a shoulder that predicts rain. Not exactly superhero material. They don't see that. They see the legend, the ghost, the woman who let a man break her face just to prove a point. Margaret watched the waves, endless, relentless, indifferent to human concerns. When I was their age, I had my own legends. People I looked up to, people I thought were invincible. Then I met them, worked with them, discovered they were just people, scared and flawed and making it up as they went along. Were you disappointed? No, I was relieved. Because if they were just people, that meant I could be like them, not superhuman, just human with standards. Torres was quiet for a moment. The Chen Foundation. Crawford told me about it. Said you're considering the speaking engagements. Considering is a strong word. You should do it. Why? Because I needed you. When I was coming up. When everyone said women couldn't be SEALs, that we'd lower standards, that we didn't belong. I needed to see someone who proved them wrong. Torres turned to face her. I didn't have that. I had to imagine it. Had to picture some future version of a woman who'd done what I wanted to do. But the candidates, now the ones coming up, they don't have to imagine. They can point to you. They can say, she did it, so I can too. That's a lot of weight to put on one person. You've been carrying weight your whole career. What's a little more? Margaret almost laughed. You're persistent. Learned it from the best. They sat in silence as the sun dropped toward the horizon. 2 women, 2 generations, 1 standard. I'll do the speaking engagements, Margaret said finally. Yeah. 1 condition. You come with me, learn how to tell the story. Because someday I won't be here, and someone needs to carry it forward. Torres nodded, something passing between them that didn't need words. Deal. The first speaking engagement came a month later. Margaret stood backstage at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, listening to Admiral Chen introduce her. The auditorium was packed. Midshipmen, officers, media, people who'd come to see the legend in person. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was controlled. 32 years of combat had taught her that nervousness was just energy waiting to be directed. The most decorated female special operator in American history, Commander Margaret Sullivan. She walked onto the stage. The applause was thunderous. Standing ovation before she'd said a single word. She waited for it to die down. Let the silence build. 6 months ago, a man punched me in the face. The auditorium went dead quiet. He was 29 years old, strong, angry, convinced that my existence as a female SEAL proved the standards had been lowered. He swung at me in a bar full of witnesses because I told him a truth he couldn't accept. She paused. I let him hit me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw the punch coming, had 2 full seconds to evade block or counter. I chose to take it, because I knew that if he hit me on camera with witnesses, the truth of who he was would be undeniable. And the truth is the only weapon that can't be argued away. She looked out at the sea of faces. I'm not here to tell you about glory, about medals, about the heroic version of military service you see in movies. I'm here to tell you about truth, about standards, about what happens when someone refuses to quit, even when quitting would be easier. For the next 45 minutes, she told stories. Kandahar, Syria, training cycles where candidates broke and rebuilt. The cold pool where she'd sat for 20 minutes to show Kyle Mercer that panic was a choice. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just told the truth as plainly as she could. When she finished, the silence lasted 3 full seconds. Then the applause exploded. Afterward, a line formed, hundreds of people waiting to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her what her story meant to them. One stood out, a young woman, maybe 20, midshipman's uniform, eyes that burned with the same fire Margaret had carried at that age. "Commander Sullivan, I want to be a SEAL. Everyone tells me it's impossible, that women can't make it, that I should choose something else." Margaret looked at her, saw herself 34 years ago hearing the same words. "What's your name?" "Williams, ma'am, Sarah Williams." "Williams, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me when I was your age." She put a hand on the young woman's shoulder. "Impossible is just a word people use when they can't imagine something. I couldn't imagine a female SEAL when I started. Neither could anyone else. But I did it anyway. Not because I believed it was possible, because I refused to accept that it wasn't." How do you refuse to accept something everyone tells you is true? By proving them wrong, one drill at a time, one evolution at a time, one day at a time. You don't have to believe you can do it. You just have to keep doing it until the evidence is undeniable. Williams's eyes were wet. She didn't try to hide it. "Will you remember me when I make it through? Will you remember this conversation?" Margaret smiled, a real smile, the rarest thing she owned. "I'll remember. And when you get your trident, you call me. I'll buy you a drink and we'll talk about who comes next." Williams nodded, moved on. Another face in the crowd. But Margaret knew she'd see her again. Some people had that fire. You could see it burning behind their eyes. Williams had it, and fire like that didn't go out. The ceremony came 6 months after Coronado. Margaret Sullivan stood at attention in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, flanked by the Secretary of the Navy and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Her dress uniform was perfect. Every medal in place. Every ribbon aligned. They were retiring her number. Not retiring her. She'd refused that. But the Navy had decided that no other operator would ever carry her call sign. The ghost would belong to her alone forever. "Commander Sullivan has served this nation for 33 years, the Secretary said. "She has trained thousands of special operators. She has completed missions that most of us will never know about. She has been shot, stabbed, drowned, and broken. And every single time she got back up." He turned to face her. More importantly, she changed what was possible. When she started, the idea of a female Navy SEAL was science fiction. Now it's history. A history she wrote with her own blood and sweat and relentless refusal to accept that the word impossible applied to her. The medal was pinned, the handshakes exchanged, the photos taken. But the moment Margaret would remember came after. In the hallway, walking toward the exit, she passed a display case. Inside was a photo she'd never seen before. A young woman in Bud's training, coming out of the surf, face covered in sand, eyes blazing with determination. Herself, 32 years ago. The plaque beneath read, "Commander Margaret Sullivan, first female graduate of Bud's, proof that standards don't have gender, only excellence." She stood there for a long time. Torres found her, said nothing, just stood beside her looking at the same image. "You know what I remember most about that day?" Margaret said finally. "What?" "The cold. God, the water was cold. Every cell in my body screamed to quit, to get warm, to accept that I'd done enough." "But you didn't." "No, because quitting meant proving them right. All the men who said I couldn't. All the voices that said women didn't belong. If I quit, they won, and I couldn't let them win." She turned away from the display. "That's the secret, Torres. The thing nobody tells you about being first. It's not about courage. It's not about strength. It's about spite. Pure, stubborn, relentless spite." Torres laughed. "That might be the most honest thing you've ever said. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain." They walked out of the Pentagon together. Two women. 2 generations. 1 legacy. The ocean was cold when Margaret waded in that evening. Coronado. The same beach where she'd trained. The same water that had tried to break her 1,000 times. She swam out past the breakers, let the cold shock her system. Felt her body respond the way 33 years of training had taught it. Not panic, just adaptation. Just the calm acceptance that discomfort was temporary and quitting was permanent. She floated on her back, looked up at stars emerging through the marine layer. Thought about her husband who'd died before they could grow old together. About Crawford who'd believed in her when others didn't. About Kyle Mercer who'd hated her for succeeding and then thanked her for saving him. About Williams who would make it through buds and carry the torch forward. About Torres who would tell this story long after Margaret was gone. About every woman who would come after facing their own versions of men who confused presence with lowered standards. "He broke my face," she said quietly to the ocean and the stars. Then he learned you don't start a fight with someone who's already at war with every limitation anyone ever tried to put on them. She floated there another moment, then turned and swam back to shore with powerful, efficient strokes. Tomorrow, a new class would begin. Fresh candidates. Fresh chances to prove that standards weren't negotiable, that excellence was achievable, that the only argument worth making was competence demonstrated under pressure. Some of them would quit. Most of them would quit. But a few would discover what Margaret had discovered 33 years ago on this same beach. That impossible was just a word. That quitting was a choice, that the only limitations that mattered were the ones you accepted. She walked up the beach, grabbed her towel, headed back toward base. Behind her, the ocean kept rolling. Ahead of her, the future kept waiting. And Commander Margaret Sullivan, the ghost, the legend, the woman who'd let a man break her face just to prove a point, walked forward into it without hesitation. Because that's what warriors did. They moved forward. Always forward. Until there was nothing left to prove and everyone understood. The standard was the standard. And she had spent 33 years becoming its living proof. Not because she was special, not because she was superhuman, but because she refused to accept that she couldn't. And in the end, that refusal was the only thing that had ever mattered.